All right. So what I want to do today is I want to go through, I want to use the stuff that you have done, these individual assignments. I would like later on to put you in a breakout room and give you a little bit of a game. We also could use, but we don't have to. We could use these first individual assignments also as a group work. I have also sent you, I hope I did I? Send you all the, no, I did not. Oh, hold on. Did I send you all the stuff that I expected to get done during this course? No, but I'll do it to you later on. So we will talk about the team assignment. It's not due before January, so don't get in a rush. But I would like to introduce what I would want you to actually work on. And you don't need to take a topic right now, but you need to actually get started in the process. So what we'll do today is we're actually working on innovation generation and on innovation validation. And I use a methodology that is really, really new. It's called the Launchpad, the Purpose Launchpad methodology. And we use this to identify the problems, validate the results or the ideas that we have, and actually make almost, it's a spiral approach, try to make it better every time that we are actually getting together. So a lot of the things that I will ask you to do after this one, do work in teams. So you need to arrange your teams, and we need to arrange groups that maybe regularly meet online. You don't have to necessarily meet in person if you don't want to. And I would like to, maybe you can already arrange behind the scenes the kind of teams that you would like to form. So we have 8 people, is that right? 8, is it 8 with me or 8 without me? I don't even know. So it's how many do you have? 8, right? So I would like to have 2 teams, or 2 teams of 4 is a little weak. I would rather use 3 teams. So 2 teams of 3 and 1 team of 2. And I would like you guys to mix as much as possible. So an engineer with a medical student, and so we have different viewpoints and different ideas and different backgrounds. So, but we'll talk about this later. But maybe if you want to mingle already in the background, you can actually set something up. And then we have it a little easier later on. So let me just move forward here. Why is it not moving? So this was your assignment. I have actually forwarded you. That was, I think Christoph was not included in that one yet, because I got his also about half an hour ago. And the one from Philip is not even with me yet. So it will come probably in the next, so you can use it later on for discussion, and then I'll put it all together. And then we can use those as a first statement, okay? So this is what I copied out from the assignments, from the individual ones. I think the one on the top, LLLT therapy, is from Rutucha. The one with the cholesterol, was that from Moritz? Was that from you? No, you had the one with the microbots. I remember that now. I think. Okay, I don't know what the one from the cholesterol, who that one was from. And next one was from Holger, I think, with the clock. Then the one with the wheelchair. Actually, Christoph, with the wheelchair, I give you 2 addresses. One is called munevo.com. That's a company I partly own. And you'll be excited to see what's there. And Zeno is another company that I'm a shareholder. They both have to do with wheelchairs and with to a certain extent with enabling these type of people. The one in the middle down there is from was this the one with the that was the microsensors, right? I forgot who that one was. And then the one with the glove is from Victoria. I remember that one as well. We don't have to talk about these in depth right now. I would like you guys to later on think about a way of communicating what you would like to do in like a minute or a minute and a half, and discuss that with your team, with the people that I put you together with. But I will put all these in a file, and subsequently you can look through them, and maybe there's something you would like to explore further. That would be your team assignment there then. It could also very well be that we find more ideas and other ideas that we would like to further explore, and then you can exchange those. But you should probably, between now and next time, start picking a topic and jointly later on work on this. So we will cover a lot of innovation methods anyway in this class. So there's a lot mentioned out here, but we don't go into detail right now. We will evaluate pretty much every single one of them while we go along and while we actually have more meetings. And what we do is we use this purpose launchpad methodology that I also will explain in a little more depth later on. I have another one that I added now. We will probably not get into it, but I would also like to invite you already into a challenge that we will do as Inca in probably March next year, and it's a challenge that basically goes 20 years in the future or 15 years in the future and creates a cartoon of what we expect will happen in 10, 15 years. And we will dedicate that to the future of hospital, the future of rural health, and the future of medical education. So we have like these three topics. So it could be very interesting for you to participate in that. Obviously, is free for you. There's no share, and I promise you already, this is a lot of fun. It's about a 4 to 5 hour engagement that you have to invest, and you will get a comic book. Once we're finished with the whole thing. It will take a while because there's an artist actually going through this, but it's really something that is extremely fun. So I've done 2 or 3 of these myself, and now we're organizing one with a US organization, and we'll put together international teams to actually work on that. So the general methodologies that we follow, and I show you 3 in a row, and they're all kind of like the same. This is the biodesign approach, and the biodesign approach is it starts with a identify concept. And identify means we need to find unmet clinical needs. We need to find problems. And so one of the exercises that I asked you to do with this individual environment was already trying to find problems that you see, maybe big problems, maybe also trying to find a solution already. But what you typically would do is you would go to a customer and to actually inspect the setup. You cannot necessarily assume that all these problems will occur to you while you sit in your office. Most of the time, you actually have to go out and see it. We have one course that we did at the electrical engineering faculty, and we actually sent the students out to the surgeries. Different types of surgeries, prostate biopsies, that was, Victoria's interested in that, right, to a certain extent, cardiac catheterization procedures, all kinds of different approaches. And we asked these student teams to come back with an innovation approach. Now that sounds pretty silly, right? I mean, there's engineers who have never really seen anything clinically, and we'll send them out in teams of 2 or 3 or 4, and they inspect 2 or 3 surgeries, and then they should come up with an innovation idea. How silly is that? Well, the reality was that they did not come up with one idea. They came typically with 5 or 6 or even 10 ideas. And then we asked them to actually, once they understood the problem, to formulate, to invent something around it, to ideate around it. Now, all these ideation ideas, these 10 ideas they created, some of them may be really completely stupid, or they're too expensive, or they solve a problem not very big. It's only a minor invention. And so there is these errors you see here that mean iteration. So when you actually have an idea, you need to go back to the clinical environment and kind of like see, is that an idea that really works? And maybe talk to the stakeholders and say, is it really something you could be interested in? And then you have an iteration process. You try to fine tune your idea, or you throw ideas out. You just say, okay, it was a stupid idea. And when you have gone through this process several times, you may get to a point where you actually say, it's so good, this idea, I need to implement it now. Now, the goal of this one is that you create disruptive ideas. Do we still remember what disruptive was? Who can I pick? I'm going to pick on Victoria again because she sits in the middle of my screen. So she's always the one who is the first one I would pick. So Philip, you were late with your delivery, so you have to answer questions. So what's disruptive? Do you remember? Philip. Is there still something coming from Philip or not? He looks, but he doesn't act. I don't know. He probably has the sound turned off and doesn't even listen, doesn't even understand that he's being called at. So, Christoph, if Philip doesn't want to answer, what is disruptive?
Disruptive technology is, as far as I have it in memory, a technology which is shattering the foundation of an older technology and goes into a new way to solve a problem which less input of manpower, resources, and so on.
Yeah, that's maybe a complicated definition. There's also not everything right, but there's partly right. You can actually fairly easily describe it by saying something needs to be at least 10 times improved. So 10 times faster, 10 times better, 10 times cheaper, or more than that. Now, what you said, I guess it was right, but when you actually have something out there which is 10 times cheaper, you will disrupt and you will change what is out there at the moment. But kind of like the way to define something or to design a device by making something a little bit better, having the same price will not change the business model, will not change the application. By actually making something 10 times better, you may not need the same manpower anymore. You may reduce this dramatically. So if you think in these terms of make something 10 times better, at least, or 100 times, you will always come to a disruption point. Now, this is the bio-design approach. So remember this is something that comes from the Stanford University. And that's how they actually create ventures. And this is a course you can take there that goes over usually 2 semesters. So they give you a 1 semester basic introduction. Then they work on creating some prototypes. And then what they do is they go and conduct interviews and experiments with the customers. And they do that very long, and they try to fine tune it. It's to my understanding and how I have actually analyzed this is a little too much. I think what they do is they do it a little too intensively, and they try to get to a very how I would say that a very good understanding, maybe almost too good of an understanding of what is needed and what's not. So there's another process, and I think this bio-design I should have actually put to the last, because the bio-design process developed from a design thinking idea. You have heard about design thinking? Design thinking is a process, and there's also a lot of books on design thinking, and design thinking is a little bit similar to this bio-design process. And it contains a couple of more components, but you see these arrows again, those are the iteration process. It starts with empathy. And empathy in this context means you need to kind of like put yourselves into the shoes of one of the stakeholders. So if we do healthcare, be a patient, what is it from a patient point of view would you like to see? You need to empathize with the patient. Or from a medical professional point of view, from a doctor, what kind of improvement, what kind of problems do you see if you would be in his shoes or her shoes? So everything starts with empathy. Once you have done that and you understand how he or she works, you can define the problem. If you see the problem, and then you ideate around this problem, create a prototype, and then test the prototype or test this business model that's behind it. And this is kind of like the same in bio-design. You see a lot of the elements there. So the ideate or the identify process is basically empathy and define. That's kind of like under this identify. The ideate process would be define and ideate. And then creating a prototype would be in the ideate process, implement process, and test would be prototype and test. So you can always use 2 of those. So this is design thinking. That's not only used in medical, that's used basically in all kinds of applications, while biodesign was really designed for biomedical innovations. Now, we also would like to talk about something that we see happening and we should follow as well on the development process of the 21st century, that you may have heard that one, agile developments. Who has heard about agile developments? Nobody? Agile is something fast, something quick. And the people who do software, they may have heard about a Scrum process. It's basically always a 30-day process where you try to develop something really that works within 30 days. And you don't actually do what, and this is the part which is mentioned here in the 20th century startup. You basically have a vision, then you build the product, and then you try to find a customer. Now, what is the main issue here? You don't even know what the damn customer wants, because it's your vision, and your vision has not been validated with what the customer is really wanting. So this is something that doesn't work anymore, but that's how the companies worked in the 20th century. The engineer said, I'm sure that the doctor needs that. And then they built something, and then the doctor said, yeah, I need a little bit of this, but not all of it. So they typically over-engineered the product and did something that was doing a job, but was probably doing significantly more than what was actually necessary. Now, a startup that works a little bit more agile would create or would build what they call MVPs. Victoria, any idea what an MVP is? And it's nothing to do with sport. MVP in sport is most valuable player. So you may have heard that. So in the design process, it's called minimal viable product. So what would be a minimal viable product of a car? Yes, Christoph?
Basically, a chassis with a motor and 4 wheels and a steering wheel, maybe.
No.
But viable means like minimum lebensfähig, richtig?
No, a minimum viable is basically, let's start differently. What is the main value proposition of a car?
Bring you from A to B.
Bring you from A to B. And bring you from A to B, you forgot something, faster than walking. Otherwise you could walk, right? So what is the minimal viable product of something that brings you from A to B faster than walking?
A bike.
A bike or a scooter, not a car. So you build a minimal viable product based on what we call value proposition. So you actually need to find out what is the most important thing to a customer. Is it really to have an air conditioning? Is that the most important thing? No, the most important thing is to go from A to B faster than you can right now. Maybe not only alone, but you can actually put your children and your wife or husband in there as well, right? So more than one. That's maybe a value proposition. And what you need to get done to prove that. And in medical field, that's the same thing. You need to have something that actually proves a point. So what is the most important point? And we will later on get to this. Moritz knows this already very much from his work and Holger as well. We'll get into what we call value proposition canvas, where we try to find out what is the most important value to a customer. Okay, so these are the things that I would like you guys to focus on, is not necessarily what could be built at the end of the day, but try to find out what is the most important thing to these customers. So what you just said with the car, that's a very interesting thing. So you would have basically had to build, to show the minimal viable product, you would have had to build a chassis. You would have to organize 4 tires, a steering wheel, a seat, and an engine. And only then the thing would have worked. Now, if you'd say the value proposition is going from A to B fast, you could have said, scooter, look, isn't that cool? Yo, and you know what? I can now add 2 more tires to it. And then maybe you can put 2 people on it. And you know what? Then we add an engine. You don't have to use your leg anymore to make it faster. So you try to build up your product definition and your product validation by adding minimal viable products. Now, if you would have, for example, used a scooter with 5 wheels, you would have found out this is not a good minimal viable product, it's not doing the job. You would have thrown it away and tried something else. That's why a lot of the concepts that we do is fail or find an idea, create something, try to find out whether it works or not. And if it doesn't work, you throw it away and do something else. That's what we call pivot. That's why it says here, iterate and pivot. We make something better, or we iterate around it and make something better, and we throw other things away. There's nothing wrong with that. There's somebody who said, a very important person who said, fail often and fail fast. Okay, so it's very important that you fail. Failing is an extremely important thing in learning something, but you need to fail fast. And what comes with failing fast? Is failing fast expensive or cheap?
Cheaper.
It's cheap. If you fail very late, if you do your medical study and you make it up to the 4th year and in the 5th year you fail and you fail completely, you have lost 4 years. If you find out in the 1st semester, no, this is nothing for me, I'll do something else, you have only lost half a year. It's a cheap failure. So that goes for a lot of things. So try to actually, every time you try to analyze something, come to a very quick decision on whether it makes sense to continue or not. And what we will do, you don't have to look at this in detail right now, because we will go through this in depth. You will see on the top, you will see what I call an EXO canvas. It's an exponential organization canvas. And we will go through something that calls scale. Those are so-called external attributes. You know this already from your course, your Open EXO course or Foundations course. Philipp, did you do the Foundations course? Ha! We need to talk some point in time. You need to follow up on this. And ideas are, what are the ideas? Who remembers that? Who sent me the, Utucha, you should say something too. I don't see you on my screen, but you're still there, right?
Yes.
Utucha?
I'm here.
And Beatrice is here too. So Beatrice, did you do the EXO Foundations?
Yes.
And what does IDEA stand for? What is it? Do you have any idea what it means? You know, it's a very easy way to actually remember. The E part on scale that's what I use for external attributes. And the ideas, the I part is internal attributes. So this is how I remember it. And internal attributes are, in this case, are, for example, interfaces. That's the I part. And E, that's a very important one. That's called experimentation. You try to experiment within your own organization. We'll go through this in some detail later on, so don't worry about it. But if you have this canvas and you try to actually elaborate on the problem and you try to see how you can actually solve it, you can also fill out what we call a business model canvas. And then the business model canvas, we will also talk about this in detail, is basically a business plan on one page. And the interesting part about this is, if you find out that something is not really working well, or is not really what you have found to be realistic, you actually change it. You use a yellow sticky note and put it on your business model canvas, and then you remove it if it doesn't work out. And you can very easily change a complete business model, and you keep it alive, you keep it active. Every time you learn something, apply the knowledge. And that's what you can do with this type of canvas. And then there is, the third one is the value proposition canvas. And you see they all interact with each other. And the value proposition canvas is try to find out who is your customer. What is actually bugging that customer? What could he benefit from, he or she? And then try to actually see whether your idea for a product, a process, matches that need. I have an example for you later on, and I also have some reading assignments for you. That's why we will not necessarily go in detail through all these things. I'll give you some homework to do and to read through it, and then the next lecture we go more into depth, and I hopefully you have questions that come from that. A little bit on experimentation, because that's a very important one, is don't try to find out things that you already know. And don't try to find out things where you if you get the answer, and that's actually from a science point of view important too. If you know that this experiment will go this way or this way, has no effect on your outcome, on your goal, why the hell do this experiment then? Just because we want to write a paper? From a business perspective, don't do this experiment. Only do experiments if you don't know what the outcome is, and if you basically believe it has an effect and it gives you some learning information for your next step. So this is an important thing for experimentation. This is not with experimentation, by the way, and also with ideas. Ideas don't mean you have to file a patent. Ideas just mean just a concept that you want to introduce, that you want to add. And an experiment does not mean a scientific experiment. It could also be a market experiment, you know, where you basically try to find out, is that something that is actually that a customer is interested in? So this is, for example, an EXO canvas, and this is, they used Airbnb. I think everybody knows Airbnb, right? Everybody used it before too? Beatrice, did you use it?
No, I don't use it.
No, you never used Airbnb? It's pretty cool. Actually, we don't have it here, but we were last year. We were in Honolulu and in Hawaii on a conference, and we had a wonderful apartment directly on the beach, and we used Airbnb for that, even as university. But very difficult for university to actually get this as an expense accepted. The university wants to have a hotel invoice. So just a quick run through this one. So the massive transformative purpose, that's also something we'll talk about it, is of Airbnb. It says create a world where you can belong anywhere. So that's the goal of Airbnb, to actually create an environment or allow you to go anywhere you want to go, and basically have and find an open house for you. And so there is these attributes, and these attributes, they are to a certain extent exponential, so they allow you to scale something without adding a lot of cost to it. So let's go, for example, on does Airbnb own any of the apartments they offer? So this is something we call leveraged assets. You don't have the assets on your own. You don't own anything. You basically have somebody else own it. You only own the access to it. So anybody has used Flixbus? Does Flixbus own the buses? They don't own the buses. They basically have bus companies work for them. They have to paint their buses green, and then they basically give them a route to drive, and they are the owners of the contracts. So they connect basically Philip or Christoph or Beatrice or Victoria to the bus line and to that schedule. But the actual expenses are carried by the bus company, whoever owns the bus. Uber, does Uber own any cars? Uber owns no cars. Leveraged asset. They have basically said, why would I invest in cars? Let the people who want to drive the car actually buy the car. So this is, do you see the exponentiality on this one? You can scale and you don't have to invest anything. If Hilton Hotels wants to scale, they have to build another hotel. And they have to invest into that. They don't. Now, what they also do is they experiment a lot. So they're very lean in their organization. They try out different things. Airbnb, they are going into different countries. So we'll go through these in depth. And I would like you at some point in time also for your idea to fill out and to think with respect to an exponential canvas. Now, don't build a company based on just filling out an exponential canvas. Try to actually use your idea and see whether you can later on actually make it more exponential, more valuable, more growing, more impactful by thinking about different attributes that are affected here. So again, don't do this first, do this later on. This is the value proposition canvas. So what the idea behind this is that you actually on the left side, you see basically this in the square, this is your product, this is your process, this is your idea, this is your whatever you want to present, whatever you have thought of. The round part is the customer. So you need to analyze, first of all, who is my customer? I make this really nice example all the time. Let's use a thing that you understand. I think I typically use the MRI. So let's use an MRI right now. Beatrice, who owns the MRI? Or who's the stakeholder in the MRI? Who's basically making decisions with respect to MRI?
I mean, the hospital, the doctor. I mean, I don't...
The what?
The MRI is property of the hospital, and the one that operates the MRI is the doctor, the expert.
So if you would, for example, if you're a salesperson from Siemens, let's say, and you want to sell Magdeburg Hospital an MRI, who would you go to? Who's your stakeholder? Who's the one you actually try to convince? You said the doctor, right? But the doctor is a little short-sighted. Be a little bit more specific.
There will be someone responsible in the MRI department center. I don't know.
So, but you need to find out. I mean, if you have an idea, you have an idea that you presented as well in your individual design. You need to know who is the person or the entity that actually is interested in this. So, Christoph, who is interested in the MRI? Who would make a decision?
The imaging department, the department that are processing images for patients and for research.
So the imaging department, let's say the radiology department, let's be more specific. So the radiology department. So who within the radiology department? The nurse, the radiographer, the assistant radiologist, the secretary of the chief radiologist, who makes it?
Be the head of the department.
The head of the department, okay. Does the head of the department, that's Professor Pech in our case in Magdeburg, does he buy the MRI? No. So if he doesn't buy the MRI, he may not make the decision, right? Who buys the MRI? Who signs the check? Who transfers the money? Professor Heinze, who's the ärztliche director, the chief of the hospital. He probably would sign the bill. Can he sign a 1 million euro check on his own? Who does he have to ask? He has to ask a technical department where the MRI actually fits in. He needs to find out what kind of rooms does he need. He needs to actually probably talk to not only the radiologist, but also the other doctors. Do we actually need a new MRI? Do we need one that is that expensive? What I want to say with this is, it's not as easy as it always looks like, these decisions. They could be very complicated, and there could be a lot of stakeholders involved. Another example, Victoria. So you have a patient with a prostate cancer. Who are the stakeholders? Who are the people that are interested and make decisions with respect to prostate treatments?
The urologicals.
The urologist, clearly. Who else?
The surgeries.
No, let's assume that the urologist is also the surgeon, right? Okay.
But
Who else?
Radiologist, also die Radiologen auch.
Possibly, yeah. Do you remember Monty Python, the cartoon?
Yes.
The patient. Doesn't the patient make any decisions? So the patient makes a decision, right? Where does he go? Does he want to go to Professor Shostak, or he says that's a crooked, I go somewhere else? Or the patient may also make a decision about what kind of procedure. Who else makes a decision? Maybe the family of the patient. Maybe the wife says, you don't go there, you go somewhere else, you get this done. How about the administrator who makes a decision of what has to be bought? Is he involved in this process, or she? What I say with this, it's not as easy as it always looks. There's a lot of people involved, and you need to find out what are these people thinking, and what is their main problem that you try to solve. So what is the main problem with the patient you try to solve?
The demand?
No, the patient has an issue. The patient has a problem, right? So what does the patient want? The patient wants treated so that cancer doesn't come back. He wants to be pretty quickly active again. He doesn't want to lay in the hospital forever, right? He wants to have no side effects. Yeah, this is what the patient wants. What does the administrator, the hospital, want?
Fast treatment.
Get it done fast and cheap, right? What does the surgeon want?
Easy handling.
Easy handling. Quality assurance, maybe, to make sure that he can prove that he did a good job, right? What does the nurse want? Don't create a mess, easy to use. Do you understand? This is what you need to look at. These are all, every one of the ones that I just mentioned are part of this process, but everyone has another problem. So what you have, if you go on the right side here, can you see my cursor, by the way? Okay, you see this one here, it's called customer jobs. So you can only fill out, by the way, one of these value proposition canvases for every stakeholder. So you could not fill one out for like the patient, the administrator, and the nurse at the same time. Fill one out just for the nurse, or just for the urologist, or just for the patient. Now, this is the job that needs to be done. So what is the core element of the process that needs to be solved? So from a patient point of view, again, get the damn thing out, the cancer out, leave everything else intact, and get me out of the hospital quick. This is the kind of job I expected to do, right? And then on that side here, it says what kind of pains are attached to a process and what kind of gains could I have? So a pain could be, damn it, how can we make sure that I recover fast? How do we make sure that I don't bleed, that I have no internal bleeding? And gains could be, if they get something done minimally invasive, I have no scars. I can get out of the hospital very quick. You understand the setup? So this is the customer part, the round. Now you don't have an idea yet. You may actually try to first find out what are your stakeholders, but if you have an MRI here, or you have a biopsy device on the right side, sorry, on the left side, where your square is, so you have a biopsy device, an automatic biopsy device for the prostate. You could actually try to find out what is the definition of my product, what does it actually do? Now you see that this part somehow should match this part. Yeah, customer jobs done. So what does my device do? Does it actually solve the customer job? Now, do I actually create a gain with my device that matches the problems or the gains, sorry, the gains that a customer or the stakeholder expects? And do I have a pain reliever that solves the pains that are described by the stakeholder? So this is a way to create empathy. So you need to put yourself into the position of the stakeholders and then see what would I like to have. And you typically do this with these sticky notes. Yeah, do I have anyone here? These yellow sticky notes, right? Beatrice has a lot of is that sticky notes you have in the back, or is that something else?
No, something else.
Oh, okay, but you know what I mean, right? So you put those on, you write it down, and what you would do then is you would actually try to verify whether these things that are collected are actually true or not. What do you do if you find out it's wrong, Beatrice?
Say again?
What is it if you, so you put these sticky notes on, what do you do if you find out that your assumption was wrong?
I think again.
You take it off, tear it apart, and put something new on. And this is the advantage of doing these things. That's also what we say agile. It's very quick. You have an overview, a very quick overview, and you can actually change these things very quickly. Now, this is the business model canvas. Again, don't look into deep detail on this. We'll go through this in depth. What I just want to show, and I told you this before, it's a one-page business plan. And what it starts with is the middle. It says here value proposition. So this value proposition, that's what we find out here. So we find out what are the most important things that we should create that we have identified. And then we put these in here, and then we see who is actually my customer and how do I get to this customer? How do I communicate my value proposition to this customer? This is almost half the business model. This is the marketing part, right? Then now on the left side here, I have, what do I need to have to get this done? So do I need software engineers, hardware engineers? Do I need a database? Do I need a company that allows me to fly from A to B fast? I have no idea. You have to figure out what you need. And then you have an idea roughly what are costs that are associated with getting that solution. How do you actually make money? So this is too quick, and I know you have not fully understood that, but what is the value proposition of Google? Rutusha, are you still there? Because I don't see you on my screen. Is she there? Yeah, she doesn't listen probably, right? Is your video on? Because I don't see her on my screen either. So who knows? What is the value proposition of Google?
Rutusha, your microphone doesn't work. From Google, the value proposition is to provide information.
Yeah, find things, right? Something like that. Find things. So everybody uses Google to find things, correct? So who's the customer of Google?
Everybody.
Everybody. Now, how do you connect that value proposition to the customer? That's a channel. How do you connect finding everything with that customer, everyone? How do you do this? Internet, right? One line, and you type something in this line, you hit enter and you get an answer. The connection is this internet page and this one line. That's your connection. How does Google make money? How much does it cost?
Advertisement. Advertisement.
Yeah, but the customer is everyone. How much do you pay for it?
No, the people that will sell their advertise there. They put
Yeah, that's a different story. But the customer, everyone, that's you, right?
I don't have to pay. For me, it's free.
You don't pay anything. Now, paying nothing is not a good business model. So you need to have something else. And now you have a second customer, and the second customer is the advertiser. And the advertiser pays money. Now, why does this work with the advertiser? What's the only value of the advertiser? It's because there's billions and billions of people asking for things, and they can directly connect things. Only by the sheer amount of people they can connect it. Now, what kind of key activities and key resources does Google need? Tons of really, really, really fast computers and really good algorithms and really good software engineers that program that crap, right? So this is a business model of Google on one page. And you can fill all the other things out too. How revenue is the money they make from the advertisers, right? And the cost they have is basically the cost for the servers and for the staff. And now you have a business plan and a complete model for Google. And you can do one like that for your potential idea later on too. This is also something we will discuss, and also something we'll not go dive in right now. I just want to make it clear to you that there is a lot of different types of innovations out there. And if you look at that, I think it's 10 all in all. And there is innovations that have something to do with the configuration. They have something to do with the offering, and they have something to do with the customer's experience. So, for example, if Mercedes improves the engine horsepower from 100 to 200, what kind of innovation is that? If you quickly look through this here.
Product performance.
Product performance. Excellent, excellent. So what if a company decides to not sell the cars anymore, but lease the cars? What kind of innovation would that be?
Profit model.
Exactly. So do you see there's different types of innovations in there, and you can actually create, for example, a customer engagement. You can create it by basically putting down, every time you buy my brand, I will I will actually donate €1 to the Brazilian rainforest. So the customer's engaged. You know, he wants to buy this because every time there's a euro going back. Brand, Apple. I mean, people like me who are kind of like fixed onto this Apple stuff. I buy stuff from Apple just because there's a new Apple thing coming. I'll just buy it because I think it's probably cool. So you buy a lot of things because of brands. In Apple, for example, they assume, I think the company is worth close to $1 trillion. And they assume that half of this value is because of the Apple logo. So if you would put the Apple logo on the Samsung device, then people probably would buy the Samsung stuff just because they believe it's now Apple. It has a lot to do with this. Service. You know, you go to specific companies because they have a much better service. You don't care so much about what the pricing is. You say, I don't care about the pricing because service is more important to me. So just want to point this out to you, innovation is not always the same. There's a lot of different ways to define innovation. And I can already tell you, if you have like 3 or 4 of these segments included in your idea, you're much better off than if you have only 1. But you're not better off having more than 3 or 4, because if you have too many of those types of innovations included, you normally cannot focus on one specifically. That also goes when we go quickly back. So who has done the EXO Foundation course? So Christoph wants to say something. So how do you remember how many of these 10 attributes you need to have to possibly be an exponential company?
I'm not sure, but I think even 1 is enough.
No.
If you're good enough in 1.
At least 4.
Oh, okay.
You should have at least 4 plus the MTP. So, you know, it's not always that you need to have 8 or 9 out of 10, because then you don't focus on the specifics too well. You need to actually have one predominant, one massive one. And just out of curiosity, does anybody know, and some of you have went through the classes know that, are they all the same value, these innovation segments, or is like 1 or 2 specifically more valuable than others? Beatrice, any ideas? So is customer engagement the same value than product performance? I'm talking about money right now. So every time I mean value, I mean actually, if you introduce a new innovation in the product performance, is it the same value? Does it produce the same type of profit than if you do something in the customer engagement? What do you think? Well, the answer is, of course, no, right? Everybody,
Yeah.
the way I formulated it needs to be no, but you have an explanation. Can you give me an example?
I mean, if I focus on the customer, I know the needs of the customer. If I just focus on the product, but I don't know if the customer will buy the product, I can make the best product, but then if it's not advertised.
Yeah.
No,
Let's stick with the car. So you know the Volkswagen Golf, right?
yeah.
I think we're right now in the 8th iteration. I think it's the Golf 8 that is out there right now. What is the main difference between the Golf 7 and the Golf 8?
I don't know because I don't know.
That's a very good answer, because I don't know either. So do you
Maybe some features better than, so the Golf number what is 8 is better than the 7 because there are
Yes.
better features,
But
better
what do you
power.
think happened at the same time? What do you think happened at the same time with the model from BMW or Mercedes or Ford or Opel? They also got better.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. So is that innovation, or is that part extremely valuable then? Probably not, because I mean, I am not sure that you shift a lot of people going from Opel to BMW or to Volkswagen just because you put a little bit more horsepower on it. Because everybody will do that. Now, if you don't do it, you will lose. But if you do it, you may not necessarily win. Now, I can already tell you, everything that is on the left side that is blue typically is significantly more valuable than anything else. So a shift in a business model is usually usually the most traumatic impact on a profit. which also is really bad for us because as engineers or scientists, we always believe that our products are so important. In terms of actually valuation, profit making, they are not. The business models are dramatically more important. That's why I also believe, going back to that before, if we want to create innovation, we also need to know a little bit about marketing, sales, and business models. You don't need to study that. A lot of these things are common sense. By the way, before I forget it, now some of you know I'm going to turn my my video background off because otherwise you cannot really see what I'm doing. I'll just stop that pretty quick and turn my video background off. So oh crap anyway. This is my favorite business book. Moritz knows that he laughs already. This is from a brewery, so it's pretty silly that I show that. But what these guys are not business people either. So they did one of the fastest growing breweries in the world, and they had to learn business from the ground up. And this book you can apply to anything, and it has like really nice little chapters. I think there's one that's just called the Cash's Motherfucking King. That's a little weird name. Keep the Faith, Punk. I mean, they have like 2 or 3 page chapters. This book is so fun to read. You will learn pretty much all the business concepts you need for anything in a really short period of time, and you have fun. And it's around beer, so it's always something that I think makes fun anyway. So I can really recommend. It's a cheap book. It's well, it's not that cheap. It's 15 or 15 pounds it costs. And I'm actually I have a couple of those, so I'll give for the best teamwork. For the best individual, where you have another individual segment you need to do, I'll give you a present of one of those books. So this one is even originally signed from James Watt, the owner of but I don't think I'll give this one out. I have another one. Maybe I have a second one on this one here signed by him. Anyway, so this is my present for you. So whoever gets this, then we'll make a little competition at the end of the day. Okay, so let me go back to my presentation. And so we talked about the segments, and the last one that I would like to go to, and I would like to focus later on. So all night I just introduce you the wordings of it, and I introduce you the general concept. You don't have to remember this at the moment. We'll go to this later. Is something called the blue ocean strategy, and the blue ocean strategy is where you focus on what they call value innovation. So you have the value proposition and you focus on the one that has the highest value. And then you try to innovate around that particular innovation. So you may, I have an example for you in a second, an example out of our own world, where you are just basically analyze what are the value propositions, what is really valuable to the customer set. This has a 90% value, this is a 70, 60, 50, 40 values. You just say, I'll forget about all the other ones. Let's focus on that one, because that's why 90% of the people buy this product because of this and nothing else. And you try to actually innovate around that. Now, again, to know what the value, how you can actually define a value innovation is, you need to understand the problem, and you need to empathize with the stakeholders, and you need to really go out and analyze everything around rather than building things really quickly. So you need to first understand the problem. This is the concept of a value innovation in a blue ocean. I know some of you know that already, but Christoph knows everything, so we go to Christoph. Christoph, what is a blue? Why is it called blue ocean? What's the opposite of a blue ocean? What do you think?
Green ocean.
No, use another color. Use a more evil color. What's a more evil color?
The yellow desert, maybe. We'll try.
a red ocean. Why do you think an ocean is red?
The sunset.
Beatrice, why is the ocean red?
Blood,
Blood. And why is there blood in there?
because they are fighting.
Because there's lots of sharks. And that's really the equivalent is if you're in a red ocean, it basically is a car manufacturer. I mean, let's face it. There is in Germany, there's BMW, Mercedes, Porsche, and who else? Volkswagen. Does it make sense for you to actually start a new car company with the same business model? Would you do that? That's kind of stupid. That's a red ocean. You don't want to get into this. You want to find yourself a niche market and you find a blue ocean where nobody is actually challenging you. So the blue ocean would be a fancy electric car, yeah, for example, because the other idiots have not managed to get it done. Try to find yourself a blue ocean, and you can do that by actually focusing on specific values that are important. And that's really, I think that's really important to think constantly about this in your back of your mind. Is that something where I will get into a shark's tank, where people will actually rip me apart, tear me apart, I will bleed to death, and I will never be actually making an impact? No, try to find a segment that is clean of sharks and develop it there. That's why it's called blue ocean. So we'll talk about this later on. And I would hope that with whatever innovation you go through, you actually try to apply this value innovation concept to your development process. And the main process that we will follow is that one from Purpose Launchpad. And it is a spiral, and I like the spiral approach. It starts right here. This is the center. And the center is, when you go up, it says called purpose. And the purpose, as the word says, what is the purpose of my idea? What do I actually want to do? What is my goal? And then you work your way in a spiral fashion out. Oh, sorry, let me go back. A spiral fashion out. You need to know, what kind of people do I need to get this done? Who is my customer? How do I create this? It's called abundance, but how do I create a business model that basically allows me to scale? How can I make sure that I maintain my position, that I stay alive as a company or as a developer? What kind of processes do you need to involve? What does my product look like? What kind of metrics? Metrics is how many tools do I have to make? What is my cost of manufacturing, etc. There's specific metrics. So the yellow phase is kind of like the identify phase. You know, if you look at the biodesign, you need to find things and you don't really know whether they work or not. And then the blue phase is more like the ideate phase. I need to find things that actually do work and I need to validate them. And the violet phase is then the phase of implementation. Oh, I really know it now. I really get to a point. And what you can do is, and we can try this later on, you can make an assessment. There's a questionnaire coming out that asks you certain things, and then it gives you an assessment of where you are. And I'll have some examples for you later on. And to do this is you actually go through a process. You see this up there again? There is purpose. I don't know. I don't see my cursor. Where's my cursor? I don't know where my cursor is. Well, it says up there, purpose, people, customer. Those are these. Remember, those are these round things here, right? And you start with the purpose, people, customer. And then on the left side, it says explore, evaluate, impact. Those are basically these different colors. You start with exploring. And then in the lines, it shows you the tools you can use to actually evaluate and work on these specific items. So, and the purpose, it says right here, define your massive transformative purpose. On the people, it says you can actually use a team canvas. And these are the things that we will try to follow. Again, we'll go through them in detail later on, but this is the starting point, and you have super tools to actually come up with specific information that you know how to gather in all these segments. Now, the most important thing, and I really like to stress and highlight this, The most important thing is that we actually learn something. So every time you do something, you say, huh, I think the way we thought it before does not work. We need to change something. That's a learning process. And this learning process is the most important thing, because we would like to do this. And that's why, again, it's this spiral. We want to get better the further we go into that and the further out we are. We need to learn more. We need to dive deeper into it. And this is why this approach of using something like a launch pad and having a purpose built into this launch pad is so important. Okay, forget it right now. I have the book for you, and I have the information anyway, but you have it now as a first thinking process. And this would, for example, be this launchpad assessment that you can do, and maybe you have some fun and do it later on when we have this team and you just basically start with it. I would advise you to do this now every week. So every week we learn something, then you apply this learning. You may actually use some of the tools that we introduce. You fine tune and make your idea ever better. Every time you make it better, you learn something. There may also be points when you sometimes go back because you find out that was all crap and you have to start all over again. That's all good. That's the learning part about it. And then we do the assessment again. And then you see how you actually change, and you will also see in the assessment what are the points you should go next and should address first before you do anything else. So you'll see some examples later on. I just wanted to basically introduce you to the main concepts at the moment. Yeah. So typically what you do then, and that's somewhat of a Scrum process. That's why it works really well with our setup too. We have like every week we can go through some of the steps. You can assign within your teams specific things you can do, and every week we can then reassess what we have done and basically get a new information of what are the next steps we should do. What you also should do then is, this is what you would do in a real professional setting. You don't necessarily have to do this, but what you would do in a company setup, maybe something that Moritz wants to do with this company, you would do a daily meeting and you would actually create a backlog. It's almost like a Scrum process in a development. You would say, okay, these are the next things we need to do. These are the next things we need to validate. You basically create a to-do list, and then you try to actually work on this to-do list and then provide the information and get to the next step. So, and that's what I'd like you to do at some point in time. This is just putting it out there. This is something due in January. So way off right now, but I would advise you to actually start working on that basically at the end of this lecture. You start working on it and you start maybe assigning within the team some things. So what I want you to do is I want you to actually have a problem area that you want to address, and I want you to actually create some disruptive solution for that. Disruptive in that context, I said before, make it 10 times cheaper, 10 times faster, better, 10 times more user, something with at least a factor of 10 impact. Be as specific as possible. You know, if you just say you wanna solve the problem of malaria in Africa, it will be difficult maybe, but maybe you have a specific solution for that. Then it's easier to actually find solutions. Follow that purpose launchpad methodology that we just briefly introduced, and do at least 2 assessments. But I would recommend you to do every week an assessment. The assessment itself takes only 2 minutes. It's done really quickly. The work that needs to be inputted takes a little longer. I would like you to also, as part of this team workout, have create obviously value propositions for two or more stakeholders. If you don't understand all this stuff, not so much of a problem, because we'll work on these individually in the next few weeks. But the general goal is that you have actually a clear understanding of that problem that you would like to address, and you have a clear understanding of how you can solve the issue, and you have already validated that to a certain extent. Yeah, I would like you guys to put this all into some form of a nice document. There is a template that I put down here. And I would also, at the end of the day, like you to present your team results in like 5 minutes or so, 6 minutes. So this is your main team assignment. Now, if we are with 3 people per team, you should be able to get that done in not too much time. Maybe it sounds to you more than it is right now. It's not that much work, particularly when you share the work. If you really like doing it, we don't have somebody who has to do it. I will introduce the ethics canvas at some point in time too, to actually think about the ethical implications, and you can add that as well. Any questions to that? No? Now, I was actually planning on doing this again with you because I thought we didn't really do it well last time, and you may have not, maybe you have learned something in between. I wanted to check on whether something has changed, but we'll skip that for the time being. I also looked at the results of this questionnaire that I did, and the best one had only 2 questions right out of 7. That was the best. And we had, I think, 4 who had absolutely no question right. So I'll provide you the answers at some point in time to these questions, because that was a little shocking that we were so bad. On the other hand, it shows that we really don't know that much about what has happened in the world, which is also, I can give you this, I gave you this book. If you're interested in that, read the book. It is very, very interesting. Maybe I can copy some things out for you and give it to you, because I have the book. You don't have to buy it. Yeah. All right. Now this is, I want to show you this. This came out the day before yesterday. So this is the future of healthcare. I just want to do, I thought it was kind of cool to see. I wanted you to get a little picture on that one. That's done by Siemens Healthineers. And interesting enough, we started with a picture from Healthineers and from GE, I think we did. These companies are really, really working on thinking about what the future will look like. They have no idea themselves. They know there's big changes coming, but I think they are a little lost as well at the moment. So let me just start this. So this is it here.
In the decades ahead, healthcare will undergo dramatic transformations. Medicine will become more precise. Value will shape care delivery. Patients will become empowered consumers. And digital
we don't see anything.
Transform every
Green
facet.
is white, at least mine.
Patients will have a digital twin, a customized computation.
Did you say something?
Yeah, we can't see anything. It's just a text board.
I think I know why, because it went to a different window. Okay, hold on. Let me just stop that. And let me just try to look at the different screen. Here we go.
In the decades ahead, healthcare will undergo dramatic transformations.
Do you see it now?
Medicine will become more precise. Value will shape care delivery.
No.
Patients will become empowered
Okay, let me just do that. Stop it then.
And digitalization will transform every facet of healthcare. Patients will have a digital twin.
Okay, how do we do this? So let's use LinkedIn. And let's go into my, okay, and now let me try to go there, Bildschirm freigeben, and here we go. Anna, who are you talking to?
I'm here with Rutuja.
Okay, so do you see it now? That's
Yes.
okay. Let me make this big.
Healthcare. Patients.
Do you see it now? Black screen. Okay.
In the decades ahead, healthcare will undergo dramatic transformations. Medicine will become more precise. Value will shape care delivery. Patients will become empowered consumers. And digitalization will transform every facet of healthcare. Patients will have a digital twin, a customized computational model of themselves. enabling Dr. Clive to anticipate illness, guide therapy options, and predict outcomes of procedures. Expanding precision medicine will enable radiologists to make highly specific diagnoses for Stephen without unwarranted variations. AI-powered decision models, fed by vast population health data, will improve diagnostic accuracy. Healthcare will become anticipatory, organized around Paula's medical conditions, and available around the clock, transforming care delivery. Multidisciplinary, highly productive care teams structured around patients and their needs will collaboratively deliver the full cycle of care. All interactions with John will become convenient, personalized, and compassionate, improving patient experience. Supported by real-time monitoring and guidance, John will become more empowered and have physical and virtual access to care when and where he needs it. At Siemens Healthineers, we are enabling healthcare providers to increase value, shaping the future of healthcare.
Cool, isn't it? So I was pretty impressed. I mean, I'm dealing with Siemens for the last 30 years, and Siemens was always to me like one of the most boring companies around. And they are getting actually quite excited now. They have innovation think tanks that we are also involved with, and they are making these future projections. So I'm really happy about seeing these kind of activities, and that should also give you some idea and some thinking process. You should be connected to the future, and it's extremely important. Good, Anna, that I saw you too, because you were just completely off my screen. So now that I know that you're around, I will ask you a couple of times in the next few minutes as well. So let's go back to my screen. I'll give you this, as always, I'll give you these slides later on anyway. So I'm gonna run through very quickly on these ones here, because I wanna go back one more time to healthcare. That's why I also showed you the video. So we had a little introduction now into the methodology of innovation generation that we do. We had a little bit of a video too. We at least have heard about value proposition canvas. We've heard about business model canvas. We have heard about Blue Ocean. We've now also heard about the Launchpad methodology, which is, they call it the meta methodology. It's basically trying to generate innovation with using different tools. And all these tools are public domain. So that's why it's really good for us to connect that. Dedicated into healthcare. But I want to use now a couple, several slides again to highlight some of the issues that we have without commenting too much. And then I give you one example from our own lab, highlighting how to use the value proposition canvas and some other tools. And then we go into one quick game, and then we're done. And then we form the teams, and that's another important thing. Okay, so let me just go into the presentation modus again. All right, quick one without highlighting things too much. Just look at the metrics. Number of healthcare jobs went up by a factor of 4 in the last 40 years in the US. By the way, what do you think the number of the population went up in that time? Anybody know? Guess. Always guessing is always good. You're typically not far off.
500 billion, I don't know.
No, how the population went from 1975 to 2015 in this case. Anybody know?
Maybe also 10 times more, factor 10.
Factor 2. So it was about 160, 170 million 1975, and now it's at 310 million, 320 in the US. This is US numbers. So when you know the population doubles, you would expect the number of healthcare jobs doubling. Well, it didn't happen. They went up by a factor of 4, so it's over proportionally. Healthcare spend, $550 to $11,000 is a factor of 22. Now, the comparison needs to be how much more did the people earn? And that's only a factor of 4 or 5. So healthcare had a 4 or 5 times higher expense development than the personal income developed. Most expensive drug, time, that's interesting too, because now look at the top one, 16 million jobs, but in 1975 they had 60 minutes time, and in 2015 only 12 minutes. It took 18% of the gross domestic product. So of every dollar earned in the US or made in the US, 18 cents went into healthcare. Now, is that bad or good? Just in general, what do you think? Bad or good? And why? Anna?
It's obviously bad because it's becoming more expensive.
I'm not sure
for-
if I think it's bad. It would be bad. It would be. I mean, spending money on healthcare is not a bad thing, I think, in general. It's better than spending it on warfare, on guns, or some other things, right? But what's bad is if you spend 18% of your income now, and next year 19%, and the year after that 20%. So ever more out of your income is being taken out for healthcare. If it would stay the same at a constant level, I think it would be okay spending money on healthcare. I don't have a problem with that. But if you look at that, it was 8% and now it's 18%. So it goes up, and it goes up significantly more than the growth rate of your income goes up. If your income goes up by 5% and the healthcare goes up by 5%, who cares, right? It's not that much of a problem. But if your income goes up by 5% and the healthcare costs go up by 10%, then it is a problem. So big issue. So cost is a major issue. So now I really want to point this out, that innovation, if you don't look at cost and you just want to make things better, you will not solve the problems. You have a question?
Well, not a question, more a statement. I think this graphic is not taking into account like the technology development. You need also more people to run these techniques.
Is that
also
so?
in 1975, like how many diseases you could treat, how many diseases we can treat now.
Yeah.
And
But
so
that's a different story. That's a story of life expectancy, and it's a story of what happens later on. But I don't know if you remember this chart I showed you with the curve in the developing world and the curve in the developed world. The curve in the developed world went up like this, life expectancy. The curve in the developing world went up like this. And they do it for significantly less money. It has a lot with other things to do, and it has to do also remember that part when I showed you that 85% of the reason why you get sick or not sick has nothing to do with the healthcare. Absolutely nothing. It has to do with how you eat, it has to do how you move, it has to do with whether you have bad air around you, good water around you. So these are the things that have been addressed that had a significantly higher impact. And if you also look, there's a chart, I'm not sure if I have this chart, there is number of doctors went up like this. Number of administrators went up like this. So you added a lot of administrative cost. Look in Germany. How many health insurances do we have in Germany? Ratusha, any idea how many health insurances we have? Where are you insured?
TK.
What?
TK.
TK. Okay.
Yeah, TK.
Anybody another one but TK?
Auga.
Anna?
No, I misunderstood the question. Everything's good.
So we have, all in all, we probably have about 150 or 200 different health insurances. Now, can anybody tell me why we have that? And can anybody tell me why? I mean, every one of these health insurances has a CEO, has a CFO, has an administrative, but they all have the same structure. So can you imagine that if we would reduce the number of health insurances, we would not reduce the number of administrative jobs in there? The amount of work that is related to, I mean, look at 12 minutes your time allocated for office visits. the time allocation is because there's also something I showed you in the, or I gave you as a reference to read, is that the medical professionals have to spend 40 minutes out of an hour on administration, filling out forms. This is the kind of crap that we have to do. And maybe technology would significantly help to actually give these physicians time back. Then we would be in a better position. But this is what happened to the healthcare profession. They only spend 6, 7, 8, 10% of their time with the patient, and the rest they spend with anything else. Ordering stuff, writing down things, maybe checking some other things. So it is a big problem. I mean, of course, Christoph, you're right to a certain extent. It's not all integrated there, but it should give you just an idea that cost is a major issue. Also, we have a lot of problems. 50% of healthcare is not evidence-based. It's basically in the book, and we have always done it like that, but there's no evidence for it. We have not a continuum. We basically in the US, I think the US is very interesting. If you get sick in the US, you may have to go to the hospital, and they get you out as quickly as possible of the house. I mean, 2-3 days, they kick you out. Nobody asks whether you have somebody to take care of you at home. And there is no follow-up. There's maybe no physical exercises you have to do. So there is not a continuation of your treatment. Really big problems. And you know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who get sick going to the hospital. So they get sicker in the hospital. There's these germs and all the other things that maybe also false treatment. So there's a lot of issues around this healthcare system. And of course, let me just go to the next one. We have these non-communicable diseases, right? So we have all these cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular, chronic pulmonary diseases. Why are they there mainly? Why are most of those there? Why do we have diabetes?
Nutrition.
And?
Lack of exercise.
And?
Stress maybe.
And? We get too old. We get too old. Yeah, it's age. Why do we have chronic pulmonary diseases?
Air pollution.
Smoking, you know, all kinds of other things, right? So cancer, why do we have cancer? Mainly because we get too old. You know, I mean, there's this old saying, if you get prostate cancer with 85, you don't die of it anymore. If you get it with 50, you die of it. So, you know, people just simply get too old. So we have this issue with aging. Now, a solution for that could be we should die earlier. Then we don't have that problem anymore, right? I don't think that any of you is prepared or willing to die early, right? Are you? Christoph, do you want to die early?
Nope, but there is actually investigation in our department about superagers. Like they stay fit, they stay healthy, they stay brain active, and they try to encode the crypticals in the brain, why this happens and so on. So basically we're working on that already. Yeah,
I think we talked about this beforehand. You know, I personally believe that the next generation could theoretically live 120, maybe even 140. We will have probably things that we can exchange. Then we have people who have, like, out of their 10 joints or 15 joints, they have 10 artificial ones. Who the hell cares, right? And maybe they have a 3D printed heart or a liver or whatever. The only thing that we are a little unsure at the moment is the brain. We're not entirely sure how we're going to get that one done. But, you know, there may be solutions for that. Who knows? So aging is one of the big problems. We will get dement. There's a high chance of getting dement when you're old. Beatrice, are you working on some of these issues? You're in the group of Duzel, right?
Yes, I'm working on this.
So this is a big issue. So even if you stay healthy and your brain blacks out, what's the point, right? But there's easier solutions, and you just mentioned that, Christoph, too: nutrition, health education, activity levels, and maybe genetic informations too. So aging is definitely a problem. And I think we still have all kinds of other global issues that we need to address, okay? So there's some questions I have put out, and also the question is data the solution? This morning I was in a presentation. It's the German Digital Health Summit is going on in Munich at the moment, and I was listening in today to a large extent, and they believe that data is the solution to a lot of the issues, but obviously that data is protected, and there is a lot of people who think about data protection over what data could do as a benefit, and they may have to actually change some of that. They have already gotten really good results just from people donating data. We're not talking about donating livers anymore. We're talking about donating data. People who wear a Fitbit, they donate their data for research. And now you may have heard about that. Maybe you have, maybe not. There's an initiative in Germany called the Krankenhauszukunftsgesetz, the future law of hospitals, and it's basically digital health law. And the German government has given 4 billion euros to the hospitals to actually, introduce digital events, a digital prescription, interoperability, so data exchange can happen, patient portals, all kinds of things that hospitals need to introduce. So it's a very interesting concept, and I think digitization is actually getting into the hospitals these days in Germany. But data is the key to all of this at the moment. So there's a lot of things that we will probably happen in the next 2 to 3 decades. One of the things that maybe I can say that too. I am actually writing the proposal for one of these hospital groups here in the Ruhr Valley for the University Hospital in Essen, the University Hospital in Bochum. So I basically am responsible right now for writing a proposal for about 80 million euros. And the interesting part is that we all believe, and the hospitals believe, that half of their beds will disappear in the next 10 years. They believe that prevention and tools that will be distributed to home care and to monitoring will actually reduce the incidences of hospital stay dramatically. And they will increase, they will decrease the hospital stays, they will speed it up. And all of this combined means we don't need these hospitals anymore, and we don't need the number of hospitals anymore. We have 1,900 hospitals in Germany, and we believe we only need about 1,000, maybe even less. So which hospitals do we close? Why do we close them? So these are a lot of things that governments think of at the moment. So just so you see that there's a lot of activity in there as well. You should also address issues like who pays for the healthcare in the future. Democratization, we have talked about this before. How do we actually change regulations and ethical issues? Regulations is a big issue. If we take every time 3 to 5 years before we get a product introduced into the market, and we have to spend millions and millions and hundreds of millions for new pharmaca, is that really something that we can afford? Is it something that we can somehow speed up? Maybe there's also simulation tools that we can use. So there's huge opportunities for all these things. I think I'm going to jump through this here quickly. I think I mentioned some of these anyway already. So I personally believe, and this is a chart. I think, Holger, we used this so many times in other things that comes from a very early paper that we wrote, that we will have things at home in the next 10 years. And we will not have to go to a doctor. We will talk to the doctor, maybe in a telecommunication link. The doctor will already have some data on his screen. Remember this Siemens video I just saw? So we'll have something where we have all the sensoric at home. They will gather data. They will compare the data with either a peer group or with yourself, and they will give you already advice. And the advice may be double checked by a doctor, but you won't go to a doctor anymore. And you will only go to a doctor, and this is what it says up there with the transition point. You will go to a doctor when the system tells you, go to a doctor now, because I cannot help you at the moment, and you need to have maybe special tools. But for 90% of the cases, you will possibly not go to the doctor anymore. You will do it at home. And this interesting today, what I saw, what they came up with, the e-prescription. So Germany will introduce an e-prescription next year or the year after. and you will not have to go to the pharmacy anymore. You may not even have to go to the doctor. You may be actually have a telemedical connection with the sensor, and it says, okay, all right, you have a cough, I'll give you a prescription. He will actually send you a QR code. You send the QR code to the pharmacy, they check on whether that's really you, and then they send you the pharmaca. You don't need to leave your house anymore for that. I think that's really beneficial because you don't typically get sick in a practice. You don't get necessarily significantly healthier. So think about this also with respect to new devices and new ideas. Think how can you actually employ technologies, and think how you can make things dramatically more accessible, cheaper for everyone. Because if you have an expensive idea, I can tell you it will not be, and if it's not scalable, it will not be successful, or at least not massively successful. Okay. One word to Victoria. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Here. So good. Because I always 1, 2, 3. I always only see 5 screens on my side, so I never see the other one. So I have to remember now that I know that Anna is there. I can always bug her again. So doctors are incredibly important, and I want to emphasize this enough that we really need to work closely with the doctors. On the other hand, don't get me wrong on this one, but doctors typically are not very innovative, and they're not very much looking out of the box. So I hope that this type of lectures that we do here are actually helping you to look a little bit out of the box. And the only way to get this done is if we really work together interdisciplinary, because we all have a little bit of a different knowledge base, we have a different understanding, and that's how we can create innovation. That's why I also would like to put you together later on in somewhat of a mixed team. This is also what I quickly want to tell you. Innovation, it's not always a product and a technology. It's often also a process or of making things available. I just give you a quick example. When I came I was in the United States from 88 to 93, and I stole an idea from the US. I basically put an MRI into a truck, into a hangar, right? And I actually drove around with this truck and provided MRI service to hospitals that did not have an MRI. Now, I did not invent an MRI. I did not invent a truck. I invented a new way of actually using the MRI, so a new business model around it. And I did not even invent that because that was in the US already. I basically stole that from the US. But what innovation is not necessarily always coming up with a product, but using a product maybe more intelligently or more differently. And also, and then I'll give you an example, an example later on, looking at how things are done at the moment and actually trying to improve the workflow of the process at the moment. Can you make it actually dramatically faster, cheaper, more accessible, even though you don't change anything else? This is extremely important to do things like that. So innovation is not, please remember that, not always has to do with a product or a device. It can also be of actually how to use this device or how to use technologies that you maybe know from other areas and use them in healthcare. Now, this is also an interesting one. So is a good idea recognizable? Is it? Holger, I've not asked you anything yet. I haven't asked Moritz anything either because I don't see him right now. So, good idea. Surak is a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why is it a good idea?
It's a complete new approach, non-invasive and quicker than the other image modalities to support.
Innovation is, what was innovation? Invention times commercialization. So the invention is there. Have we shown that we can commercialize it yet?
So far not, but I think the Sora guy is working on the market and there is a need for.
Moritz, are you in agreement?
I agree, yeah.
Have you actually sold one yet?
No.
Here we go. We need to work on it. So you need to continuously check, the market requirements, what is needed, and you need to be extremely open. And I know you are. I'm not saying you're not, but you need to be agile. You need to actually, play around with these ideas and continuously validate your assumptions. But to validate assumptions, you need to first have assumptions. You need to have market assumptions. Do you need that in the market? Do you endoscopic user, do you need that? So you need to continuously verify this. So in general, a good idea is not recognizable. And the best example I always use for that, I have about 110 patents or patent applications, and I actually only made money with 3 or 4 of that. So the rest is still sitting around. I hope Sorg is one of the inventions too, so I definitely hope you will be successful. So do the best, okay?
We do.
Now, this is also insane ideas, right? I like to put the idea in front. Sell books via the internet. It's a pretty insane idea, or pretty simple idea. What is that? What is that idea? Who is this? Who is build a cheaper computer for everybody? Who is post CVs on the internet? Those are simple ideas to a certain extent, and people thought, forget it, who cares? But there's huge companies that develop from there. So selling a book via the internet, why would you do that? I mean, you guys cannot think back 30 years ago, but 30 years ago, Amazon was not around. 25 years ago, they were not around. Maybe 20 years, they started to come, and then people still said, no, I'd rather go to the bookstore and kind of like feel it, right, and go through it. So people 20 years ago didn't want to buy books on the internet, and now you don't buy books in the bookstore anymore. I haven't been in a bookstore for probably the last 5 years at least. Okay, a very important one, because that's what you typically find out when you start with innovation. You said, how do you actually come up with problems, right? And how do you actually come up with good ideas? And the first thing is that, we ask the customer. Well, my first question would be, I have done that before with the MRI, who is your customer? You need to know who your customer is, otherwise you cannot ask a customer. What is the customer telling you? Do you remember what there is this very important saying? I think it was Henry Ford who said that. He said, if I would ask what my customers want, they said they want a faster horse, not a car. That they couldn't imagine that. So typically, you need to be, yes, asking a customer, but you need to have a little bit of a forward-looking mentality, because the people cannot imagine what could come up, and they're really not into this. And in all honesty, the medical profession is probably one of the ones who can least look forward. So when you typically ask a medical doctor what he or she wants, they will tell you, yeah, we need to have this one here, but it still should be a scissor, right? It still should be something with two fingers. And at the end of the day, they typically come up with little incremental innovations, little things they can improve, but the big things typically don't come. Victoria is of course a different one. She's the blend innovation lady here, but in typical, a doctor will not tell you what will happen in the next 10 years. He will tell you something he would like to have right now done, that he's doing already, that's doing a little better. But he will not basically tell you something where he or she will lose his or her job in 10 years because we'll get rid of him. So one of the really nice things from Steve Jobs is, if I would always do what my customers tell me, by the time I've done it, they want something else. So ask a customer, but don't rely too much on them, okay? And also, this person is still alive, Bill Gates, is that, and this is something that's very important for all of you, gathering information and making sure that we are addressing the right problem has to be at some point in time over. Because if you gather too much information, what does information gathering cost you? Mainly time. If you spend too much time on it, somebody else may have done it already and may pick it up. You don't need to be always 100% sure. You need to be 90% or 85% sure, 80% sure. And actually you will learn while you do things anyway. Maybe we'll ask Moritz again. Do you guys have, Moritz, has your business model, your ideas, have they changed from the time you submitted your proposal to now?
For the business model in general, or?
Yeah, in general.
Definitely. We are discussing now every week about it, and they change every week, I think.
So this is exactly what happens. You will actually learn while you do things. If you never start doing things, you will never learn anything. That's what one of the things that I would like you guys to do is to actually do something, validate something, and learn something by doing this. If you just assume things, you will never learn anything. I have this, I've shown it to some of my people where there is this is very interesting, where there is the cake of knowledge. And the cake of knowledge is one slice, right, out of the round one slice is that the part that's called I know. And then there's another slice that may be a little bigger than the first slice. And what is that one called? Beatrice? So one is called I know. So what is the other one called?
I don't know.
I don't know, exactly. So I know and I don't know. So I know how audio technology works. I don't know exactly how I get the audio sensor attached. You know, these are the kind of things you know you don't, but you will figure them out. You have an idea. And then there is 2/3 of the cake. And what is that one called?
Things I don't know what I don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. You have no clue. And the only way to find this out is actually to start it. Otherwise, you'll never find it out. So interesting enough, and if you really go back and think about, if you started something, you very clearly knew math is not my thing, but biology is my thing. And then you start with medicine, and then you have no clue what all the other things that are involved. You don't know. You just find it out because you started doing it. And this is the same thing with innovation. You cannot really predict everything. You cannot really plan everything. You cannot really find out everything beforehand. You need to just simply start at some point in time. Okay, so most important thing is you need to go out and again focus on the problem. Okay, so I think I'm cutting this. What is this? I'm getting to the.
It's like a wall, someone behind with the finger.
Elevator.
What?
What the elevator is? Somebody stuck in the elevator, or was it?
No, up there is just the stages, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, okay. All right. Somebody jumping down from a jumping board in the pool. Yeah. Okay. This is a funny one, but I still believe that's what I want to show you. There's a lot of there's this innovation ideas and concepts, and I want to just show them to you. It's a little bit of a funny thing with the incremental innovation. It still is a shaver, right? And there's different types. Fat, the one that's gluten-free toilet paper, that basically means who the fuck cares, whether that's gluten-free or not. And what you will always find out are the people on the bottom right that tell you it will never work. There will never be books that have been sold over the internet. There will never be a car that is replacing horses, etc., etc. Most of the time, you will find people who tell you why things don't work. Try to find people who tell you why things work or should work. There's a very important venture capitalist in the Bay Area. Some of you may have heard his name, Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel was the founder of Facebook, the founder of PayPal, and he's invested in a lot of other companies. German origin, so I think he's born in Germany and grew up there, but he doesn't speak German anymore. He's one of the richest people in the world, and he invests exclusively in companies where people come to him and kind of like leave the impression, I have no idea what I'm doing wrong. Everybody thinks it's a completely stupid idea, and everybody thinks it will never work, and that's the kind of ideas that he invests in. Because he thinks when people are that motivated and really believe things will work, they can make things work, and that's what he invests in. And you will always find people that say it will never work. And who are the ones that will always tell you will never work? Like let's assume you have a great idea and you want to start a company. Who's the one who will try to keep you away from doing this?
Big companies and linear growing companies.
Your mother.
What?
Your mother will tell you, go to Siemens, go, Victoria, become a doctor at the hospital. They will tell you to go the conventional way. They will not typically help you in some weird, crazy ideas. And so be careful who you listen to. That's also with the companies and with the customers you talk to. Last word is a very bad picture, I think, from the resolution, but I just wanted to tell you that you may have remembered I showed you one time with the Industrial Revolutions 2 and 3 and 4. We are now in 4 at the moment, and that was actually done at an Industrial Revolution 2. There must be Industrial Revolution education, in which educational science and the ingenuity of educational technology combine modernize the grossly inefficient and clumsy procedure for conventional education, done in 1924. That was from the Industrial Revolution 2 to 3. And I believe that the education system that came out of this is still around, and we have not adjusted it to the Industrial Revolution 4. And I think everything, if you really look back, everything starts from education. And if we do the education like we do right now, I'm really a big proponent. We need to really work on this predominantly to actually get innovation introduced and innovation generation introduced into the curriculum, university curriculum. Otherwise, it will be a problem. Or the Americans will take it away from us again, or the Chinese maybe, who are actually focusing dramatically innovation generation and focusing on soft skills and not so much on the real hard skills. Okay, reasons for failure. The main reason for failure for projects, it's not only for startups, it's also for innovation projects, is because you have not understood the needs of the customer right, which means you have not understood the problem right. It's 44% of all the startup projects and general innovation ideas fail because of this. Financial knowledge, of course, if you don't have a clue of how to keep the money together, that's a large issue. They did not understand their customer or customer segment. They did not even know who to sell it to and who the customer was. Unrealistic revenue assumptions, cannot clearly communicate the product idea. Very important thing too, you need to understand, you need to communicate, what are you really doing and why is that so good that we're doing? And I hope that we will address those 3 ones in this class. I will not give you anything on finances. Read that book. And it's also not so important for the time being. We are not talking about money and running a company right now. That's a completely different thing. We're only talking about, does it make sense? And is anybody possibly interested in that? So we try to hypothesize. We're not getting that far. If we would get that far, I have also a lecture I do at the Technical University in Munich, where we do medical technology entrepreneurship. And we teach normally the students in a 2 to 3 hour session all the finances they need. So I have no idea why people spend 4 years on getting a bachelor and 2 more years on an MBA on this business. It's not that complicated. Yeah, and people with some common sense can actually all figure that out. Okay. But all in all, if you don't understand the commercialization of it, you will not be innovative and you'll not be successful. So what I would like to do is I would like to give you some space, and then we are also done. I would like to play a quick future wheel with you, and I would put you in let's do 2 teams. That's good enough. 2 teams together. And who has played future wheel before? Nobody? Anna, you were never in my class, right? Rotucha, not either. Okay, so future wheel is something where we actually look at a technology, we look at an idea. And that's why the first thing you do is you actually discuss your ideas that you presented in your group quickly, like maximum a minute on each project. And then you decide in your group of which of the projects you would like to evaluate further right now, only for this game. It has nothing to do with the follow-up games. And what you do then is you put this in the center of you take a piece of paper, maybe somebody draws a paper, I don't know. We can, at some point in time, we can figure out how to use a whiteboard on that. There is also Miro you can use as a whiteboard, but somebody can be the draw, and you put this technology in the middle, in the axis. Let me show you this. Okay, there we go. So we put this in the axis. So let me see. So do you see it up here? It says trend. You put this in the axis. That's let me show you a real result. This is how it comes out. Let's use driverless car as an example. So driverless car is your technology you put in the middle. Think about this as a big wheel. And then I would like you to actually come up with 4 spokes. So you make 4 lines. So this is, where's my, I can see my, so go back. I can see my cursor. You see these big blue arrows? This is basically a line, 1 line. You do 4 of those and you make another ring. And then you identify what are the first line implications of a driverless car in this case. So accidents will go down. Yeah, understood? So if you have a driverless cars, accidents will go down. The traffic flow will go up. So another first line implication that happens when you have a driverless car. Need to stay awake. You don't need to stay awake anymore. Yeah, you can actually sleep in the car. The car brings you from A to B and you somehow wake up, right? Etc. So you can use your own technology, put it in the center, and then think about what does that really mean? Can somebody, Beatrice, what was your idea?
I did the low-level laser therapy for the loss of bone mass.
Okay, that's too complicated for me right now. Who did the one with the multi-sensors?
Me,
Who's me?
Rutuja.
Kutuja, I don't see you, Kutuja. So you have a multi-sensor approach. So basically, I think from your idea, I understood everywhere there are sensors, right?
Yeah.
So if you have everywhere sensors, what would the first line implication be? So you go through the city and there's all sensors and they measure you, right?
Yeah.
So what would happen? What would be
I
one of the
suggested that to be on public places like train stations or tram stations.
Okay, what would the first line implication would be? What would that mean?
You are always under scanning.
Okay, what does it mean? Do we need as many emergency cars anymore?
No.
Because we may actually find out that something goes wrong with you before you fall down, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you understand? Put the technology in the middle. Think about what could be a direct implication of this, and then next step, you draw another. In this case, these black lines. You draw from the less accidents here. You draw what is the secondary implication of that one. If there's less accidents, we have a lower risk of accident. We have a lower risk of fatalities. So this is that's the secondary implication based on the first one. Now in a hospital setup, if you would, for example, be switching everything to home care, then one of the first lines would be, cool, I don't have to go to the doctor anymore. Secondary one would be, oh, but then we don't need as many doctors anymore. We don't need as many hospitals anymore. And the reason why I like this approach, this futurable, is because the first indications or implications are sometimes very obvious, but the secondary ones are very difficult to find out. And that's where a lot of innovation potential is. Okay. You should do this exercise by discussing, now I'm going back again, by discussing this likely development and trend or your technology. You can also use whatever you want, but maximum 2 minutes on this one. You basically do these first line implications, maximum 4 minutes, 1 minute per spoke. And I already doubled that. Normally we do this actually in half the time. So Christoph, not too much talking, getting done with it, right? Because if you talk too much about it, you will never get it done. Second order ones, you actually spend another 1-2 minutes per first implication and have 2 more on each of those for the secondary. So a maximum of 8 minutes, maximum of 4 minutes on that one. And then maybe you try to highlight what you have learned in this exercise, maximum 1 minute. So I would say a maximum of 15 minutes and you should be done with that. And if you spend too much time on it, you will not get done. and discuss too much and you will not get done. Okay, so I'm gonna put you in some groups. So breakout sessions. You guys are getting tired. I see that. So I put you now. I put in 2 rooms. So I have 4 members per group. Okay. So and then I do it 15 minutes. Okay. And I jump left and right a little bit. Okay. Everybody knows what they have to do. Anna. Yeah. Victoria. Mutucha also. And Philip, yeah, I've not really picked on you. I think you have taken, you have tried to stay hidden. Did you send me the stuff? Okay. All right. Starting now. Oh.
Mein Schöner.
Oder vielleicht auch Gewebezellen bilden, also Gewebe an richtige Stelle bringen. Also was ersetzen.
Ja, man könnte auch gleich das Imaging mit den, wenn die einmal im Körper unterwegs sind, die haben dann irgendwelche Sensoren, dass die von innen das Imaging mit übernehmen können.
Okay, Anna, was hast du bis jetzt von den Ideen, die wir gebracht haben?
Ich habe nichts gehört, weil ich kurz vom Internet getrennt war. Könnt ihr zusammenfassen? Also 4 Striche, die größten Impacts?
Also Vaskulatur reinigen, Gewebe rausschneiden.
Also Krebszellen oder sowas.
Genau, Imaging hatte jetzt Holger noch gesagt. Und was war das letzte? Das war
Medikamente an die benötigte Stelle bringen im Körper.
Aber
Okay.
wäre die Implication dann nicht sowas wie keine offenen Eingriffe mehr oder keine
Ja, wie gesagt, gar nicht so
Narben?
weit denken. Wir müssen jetzt gleich in die nächste Runde. Das hat Michael ja angestrebt. Ja, da kriegen wir auch einen Daumen für. Einfach weitermachen.
Okay, das ist Tissue.
So, und dann, wie gesagt, bei der Vaskulatur können wir, wie gesagt, einmal unterscheiden zwischen venöser Vaskulatur und arterieller Vaskulatur zum Beispiel, als Unterscheidungspunkten. Oder
Basically, this is a sensor that is placed in public transportation because where the amount of people are, massive amount of people, and this sensor is detecting who is sick, who is not. And if everyone that goes on the bus, for example, has a proper personal corresponding sensor that could communicate with the one on the transportation.
You need to move faster.
Huh?
You need to
No,
move
because
faster.
I don't understand what she built. Otherwise, how can I comment if I don't understand the idea? So, and this sensor basically, do you receive the notification if you are sick or not, basically, and where you have to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Oder ähnliches könnte man das ja auch nutzen.
okay, gut, dann haben wir jetzt die ersten zwei Patterns, dann sind jetzt Moritz-Patterns noch dran, wo wir weiter dran arbeiten müssen.
Aneurysmen kannst du noch mit aufschreiben, Anna.
Sorry?
Aneurysmen kannst du noch mit aufschreiben bei Vascularization and everything.
Aneurysm Repair. Vielleicht, ja. Okay, bei Imaging habe ich das noch nicht ganz verstanden, was wir da vorhaben. Also einfach Internal Imaging. So als
Ja,
Stichwort.
was für Möglichkeiten, dass der Mikroroboter dann hat von Infrarot über aktuelle Measurements, Ultraschall, normale Videobildgebung.
Ja, also das, was alles schon so gibt, so ein bisschen, nur minimalistisch.
Und ich sage mal, wenn der nachher auch irgendwelche Strahlungsquellen in sich hat, dann kann man das ja sicherlich auch von außen irgendwie auslesen, dass man dann wieder sowas wie eine kompakte CT-Bildgebung hat.
Ja. Auch vielleicht so ein 3D-Echolot, ne? So, dass du auch quasi von innen dann die Strukturen alle noch beleuchten kannst.
Okay, it is just a cough, and in that case, you are already spreading it when you're in contact with someone and you are sneezing or coughing with a person or a friend you are with.
Okay, understood. But yeah, but in this case, so if you receive the communication, you have like you can reduce the cost of your treatment if you go on prevention. Because if I receive notification, you have been in contact with someone with a tuberculosis, for example, I can prevent that I develop the thing if I go checking first, if I have some thing. And so I can prevent even the cost of a possible treatment if I check earlier.
Exactly.
So what goes down with this sensor is maybe also the healthcare cost.
Yeah.
Because if you, let's say, attack the virus before it's become too late, maybe even to spend money on antibiotics or treatments or stuff or whatever.
So, but this would just work if the sensors are more sensitive than usual tests you would do, right?
Sorry?
I think that this idea would just work if the sensors are more sensitive, like the test you would usually do when you have symptoms.
Exactly.
Diagnose them.
Exactly. The sensors would be more sensitive.
So the sensors have to be of another technique to detect specific microbiome or Okay.
But to be honest, we already have a lot of sensors which are micro electromechanical and they're really very cheap. So in my opinion, until in the next 10 years, it would be more cheaper and more sensitive.
I can't really see the big implications. I'm thinking, but I don't. I mean, of course, it would lower down the administrative part. Yeah, sure, because you have like all these ideas. You have these AI-driven data processing and yeah, guidance of patients, guidance of people. I think yeah, this is always a big advantage of AI-driven processes.
The hospital and the doctors get sufficient time to have a well-planned treatment, then I think there won't be a lot of patients in the hospitals too every time.
But don't you think there are so many false positives?
Sorry?
There can be also false positives. Because I mean, a sensor that can predict if I can have something because I've been in contact with someone should be very, very, very precise, and precision require also money. So like, I think I just make a reflection of what I'm using as a brain sensor device for my experiment. More precise you want a brain sensor, more you have to take out your cash. So I'm thinking something that can predict that I can have a disease just for placing on my body. I mean, either it's under the skin, because just placing on the body, I didn't know how, and I don't know, I'm just thinking because, and how many false positive can arise this problem also. Just because you have been in contact with someone doesn't mean that necessarily you can develop.
Sorry, just a quick question. Should we just think about positive implications of this idea, or also, okay, yeah, also
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Both are good. And the same thing what you just said with the false. I think false negatives are worse anyway than false positives. So that would be the one thing you shouldn't. But the question you should ask yourself is, how accurate do things have to be? For example, that's also an important thing, you know, because the more accurate, the more expensive it will be. But maybe it's better to actually have some false negatives or some false positives. But better than nothing. Okay. Yeah, but positive or negative, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think
I think that we have another 2 or 3 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. As I said, it's rather similar to this Corona app.
Implications. Sowas wie keine Notwendigkeit für Betäubung oder sowas, dass das wegfällt, das Risiko dann.
Vielleicht könnte man auch Filterung damit betreiben, dass man halt diese Mikroroboter hat, die das Cholesterol rausfiltern, und die holt man dann aus dem Körper raus, und dann sind die ein bisschen fettig verklumpt, oder die sammeln das irgendwie in ihren Containern, in ihren kleinen Körpern und holen das raus, also vielleicht auch Blutreinigung.
Also Filterung.
Und ja. Ich würde noch sagen, es nach 2 Minuten und dann. Ja? Und keine Lösungen, nur Implikationen, nur was bedeutet das. Ja? Okay. So everybody back? So how was it? Frustrating or not?
No, quite good. I think in the process of thinking about, everybody came up with a lot of good implications and ideas how to use it or what it can be used for.
So maybe we don't necessarily want to discuss this right now, but what's important is that that you analyze on whether you have learned something and whether you have actually detected something that gave you new information of how to address innovation for your device that you placed in the middle, or your idea you placed in the middle. Because sometimes, again, the first implications are maybe somewhat obvious, but what could that mean on the secondary side? And that's important because you could actually do something that addresses these issues that are further out. That's a clear innovation concept that I think you should use. You can use it for anything, and you can play these kind of games relatively quickly by just putting 3 or 4 people together. Or 5 and starting to draw something. It's actually obviously a lot more fun when you do it in real life and you have a big sheet and you can draw on it. But I would recommend you do this actually frequently and see whether you have new learnings that come out of it. So let's go quickly back to the presentation. Do you see my screen, right? So I'm gonna not go into presentation modus right now. So if you have drawn something, could you make a picture of it and send it to me by mail? I just always like to collect these kind of things if you have it. Yeah. All right. Just very quick going through on the value propositions. We have seen this one before. We have seen this one before. I wanted to give you a little bit of 2 charts, which we don't go into depth right now. More onto the value proposition. So the one on the right, the customer side, is basically the who part. Who do we try to make something for? On the left side, that the square part is what do we actually offer, and the value proposition is a combination of, or the match between who you offer something and what is offered. And I have one example I showed you. And last one on this one is value propositions in the canvas. Everything you put down, please make sure that it follows these steps. But we'll go into those into more detail in the next lecture. But I'll send you these slides anyway. Quick example. And the example is known quite well to the people who are from Inca anyway. But I wanted to show you a new idea that we have with respect to contrast media injection. Does anybody know what that is? You basically, not what this is, what contrast media injection is. You need it for MRI. Maybe Beatrice knows this. You have a contrast media you use that basically highlights certain areas that either metabolically very active, or in case of CT that have a. Say again.
The injector for the PET.
Yeah, for example, the PET would be a radiopharmaceutical you inject. In the MRI, you would inject gadolinium or gadolinium-based construction. In the CT, you would inject something something iron containing some form of metals, because the metals have a higher absorption rate with respect to X-rays, and you see a different type of contrast. Now, what they typically look like is this in the MRI. They are quite bulky and heavy, and it's like 30 kilos. They have a battery at the bottom. So right here is the battery setup. I don't see my mouse again. Battery setup. And you cannot really get them any closer than that to the MRI, because they have a lot of metals in there and they would be attracted by the MRI. So This is a big issue because if they're not close to the patient and the patient is inside the bore here, then you also need a 2-meter long line to connect to the arm of the patient. So I have actually, at some point in time, I developed a device in 2007, interesting enough. And if you look at this device, you will see it doesn't really look that much different to the one on the left. And that's actually what these people wanted me to do. They just wanted me to design a device that is pretty much the same, doesn't change anything, except for the fact that it worked with a 7 Tesla in this case, because we had a different type of drive mechanism. But these things cost 20,000 euros still, this device. So what we never looked at on whether we could actually reduce complexity, cost, and handling of this one. And we never really looked on whether we could be able to, instead of having something for 20,000, could develop something for 20 euros or 200 euros, factor 100, factor 1,000 cheaper. Now, what I did with this one, I try to understand the problem first. And here I looked at the different competitions and I looked at what they have. They have like really big and heavy things. They use 100 milliliter injectors. Beatrice, do you have any idea how many milliliters you use for an MRI, contrast media?
No, I don't know because I don't do MRI.
Well, you're about 50 kilos, right?
Me?
Yeah.
59.
Yeah, it's not, I didn't want to know that exactly. So roughly 50 kilos. It means you need 10 milliliters. Moritz, you're about 85 kilos, 90, 100?
85, I guess.
Oh, that's not bad. So I'm 100. So I'm double Beatrice, and I would take 20 milliliters. Why the hell do we need 100 milliliter syringes if you ever use only 10 milliliters or 20 milliliters? Can anybody tell me that?
Safety.
There's absolutely no reason for the only reason is that these are actually originally CT injectors that were made MR compatible. And for CT, you need more contrast media. But they were never really looking at the specific needs. And then we looked at, go next one, we looked at what is actually, this is what I just said, is the amount you need. So it's about 0.2 milliliters per kilo. So Beatrice times 50 is 10 milliliters, Michael times 100 is 20 milliliters. And then we looked at what we must have in an MR, what we should have, nice to have, and not needed. So this is the value propositions again. Remember the value propositions? What do you really need to get done? What is the thing you need to have? And what is the priority? What is the most important, least important thing? And of course, if you have all these things, the air conditioning in the car, the leather seats, they are expensive, but do you really need them? No. You need to have a motor to bring you from A to B and something else. This is the must-haves. And if you look at an injector in the must-haves, and then again, I wanted to show this blue ocean approach, and then you try to make this high priority your most important innovation, and you even increase the value of it, you come up with innovation. And so what we did is we try to focus on just this must-have that will fulfill that. And what we did is I use this value proposition canvas, and here it's important that you use a value proposition canvas and you base it only on one customer. So the customer in my case is the private radiologist, and I used only one value proposition that I wanted to test, and the value proposition was cheap and easy to use. And the customer job of the radiologist is find pathology using MR imaging, low error margin, high standard follow. He has following pains, contrast media is expensive, setup time is long, application is difficult to use with these big suckers, right? He could recover costs if he would be cheaper. He would have some forensic information about when things are being done. If there's it's easy to use, there's also no errors. And our device, if you have a cheap one, could do this and this and this and this. So the first thing we did is we built a concept. That's a 3D printed, no, it's not even a 3D print, it's just a basic visual concept. So can we actually do something that would be like this size? And then we address the customers and we try to actually find out on whether that would be something where we call it an espresso concept. So Beatrice's 10 milliliter are red capsules and Michael's 20 milliliters are blue capsules. So if you only use a capsule approach, you put it in and this MRI injector only does one flow rate, 1 milliliter per second, nothing else, just that. And that's all you need. And if you focus on these two things that are essential for getting a successful conscious media injection, you can actually you can do it for 20 euros, not for 20,000. 20 euros, a factor of 1,000 cheaper. So what we did then is we actually created real prototypes. We created some electronics too to actually get it switched and have a connection to the cell phone. You can start and stop it. And we further developed this concept on. And this is a video, so I'm gonna show you the video very quickly. So you have, this is a prototype. This is the minimal viable prototype. It's a drawing or it's a cartoon. And everybody knows what I'm talking about when we show this cartoon. There is individualized capsules. I put them in. Then I substitute I have another bottle with saline solution. I put this in, I connect that, I put that on the arm. We have not shown the arm. I have the Y piece together, and then I can inject. So I'm going to cut that short right now. But this is important because this is communication to your future customer. How do you communicate what you want to do? An important thing for communication is what we call a one-sentence elevator pitch. How can you, sorry that I bug you, Beatrice, but you're on the top of my video list here. What is your PhD topic? In one sentence.
Neurofeedback training to improve working memory.
Okay, that was very good. So who else do I have there who could, Christoph, do you have a PhD topic that you can tell us in one sentence?
Yeah, detecting vascular patterns in the motor cortex and check about training effect with different methods.
Okay, and what is this good for?
For example, patients with stroke or they're in rehab, how they faster learn with this strategy, and also for high performance sports, like how players better learn.
And how do you do it?
At first, I'm on the foundation research.
I just wanted to bug you a little bit and get information, because it's very difficult to explain what you do in one sentence. I at least did not understand what you're doing. You were kind of like telling us a goal, but there's a lot of things involved. Now, if you have a new idea, you need to actually communicate really quickly what you want to do, and you have to focus on specific aspects.
You mean a pitch?
It's like a pitch, and they call it elevator pitch because you should be able, you remember these elevators that were going up and down in a band, right? And they were turning around. Paternoster, it's called in German. So you basically jump in and you happen to find somebody who has €1 million in his pocket and is willing to invest in your company. You have to basically be able to tell him or her in like 30 seconds in an elevator, what are you really doing? And so this is why it's called elevator pitch. And we can use this value proposition canvas very interestingly as creating a elevator pitch. So here's the template to that. And what you do is you prioritize your individual points in the products and services, in the jobs to be done, and then you put them together and create the sentence. So let me do this in the example that we have done here. So I have actually used the same points that I used before, and all the ones with the red that turn into blue are the ones that are my high priority ones. So the most important job to be done is high standard and follow procedure. The most important pain is application is difficult to use. The most important gain would be easy, no error, and cheap, right? And I put the same thing on the product side, and then I just basically fill this template out. Our one flow MRI injector, our conscious media injector helps, and that's my customer that I've identified. Now I have one sentence that describes what I want to do, what my idea is. And of course, I can fine tune. I don't have to use the same language, but I use it as a way of actually putting a sentence together. This is a very, very powerful starting point, and should also show you what this value proposition canvas can be used for, and how you can change things and how you can make things more attractive. When you find out that the priority number one of the jobs to be done is not the most important one, you replace it, and you have a different value sentence. Okay, so anyway, what I think we'll cut this one here. What I want you to do is to think about this for the future. I think forget this one here. What I have fun with the group finding. I would like you guys, when we're done with this, till next week, to think about who wants to be in a group together. If you don't come up with that yourself, then I'll just mingle it together. We have altogether 4 Inca people, right? So we have Anna, Moritz, Rutusha, and Holger. And if we create, do you want to rather have 4 people in the group or 3? 4, yeah, of course, that's only 2 then. So then we do 2 groups, and I would like to have 2 Inca people together with 2 non-Inca people. Okay, so not 3 and 1 or 4 and 4, but 2 Inca people in each group, right? And
by the way, talking about Inca people, me and Beatrice gonna visit you on Monday at 2:30, I think. Yeah.
okay, that's so. Talk to Holger. Holger's the guy who will take care of you, right, Holger? Where are you sitting anyway, Holger?
In my kitchen.
Oh, I thought it looks like a bar or something. Are the bars open in Sachsen-Anhalt? No, it's all closed.
Everything's closed.
Okay. Now, what you should do is discuss among yourselves. Also, I'll send you all the topics that you have provided in individual assignment. I will send them to you now. I have actually integrated the one from Philip as well. And maybe you can think already which topic you would like to use in your team. You don't have to do it right now. Think about more about things that you would like to address. And next meeting, we'll decide on the groups. And then we really go through what I have already mentioned here. I just wanted to prepare you, not so much that you have to do it. And I want you guys to basically start working on this purpose launchpad approach. Also, this one we will go through next time. There's a lot of things that will be done. We will go through this statement of all the tools you can use. We will develop an MTP, the massive transformative purpose. I will show you how to do this. This is the way to do it. So I'll go through all these things next time again. We'll actually get an introduction to the OpenExo canvas, to the business model canvas, also how these things interact with each other. And we'll start working on not only exploring, but also slowly getting into validation, and then starting this print process. I will always, give you additional information on this one, and we'll try to actually every week that we come together have a little status report on where we are, so that we start with this after next one. And then we should have enough time to have like 3 or 4 sprints before the class is over. Okay. I just wanted to show you basically the outcome. So you typically come up with something that is an assessment, looks a little bit like on the left side. You have not really done much, and at the end of the day, when you have gone through 2 or 3 or 4 iteration processes, you should have significantly more information that makes you really confident about your idea. Okay, so there's a brain and a heart involved. So the hard part is we do this whole assessment, and the brain part is we use real tools to actually put this together. Yeah, so there's one more time the teamwork. I will also ask you, please, as preparation, to read these highlighted ones here. So these are all short ones, so don't worry about it. I think the business model canvas and the value vision canvas, which is B and C, are really only like 7 or 8 pages, and there's really only very little text on it. The value proposition design is an optional one. The massive transformative purpose is a mandatory one. You should definitely read that. That's written by Peter Diamandis. And you should also get yourself familiar with number E, which is that purpose launchpad methodology. It's also not very, very long. We'll go through those again once we meet again, but I would like you guys to have at least some knowledge on this one when I introduce new concepts. I sent you all this stuff. I'll send it to you also, pretty much right away after we're finished. So for the next week, I would like you guys to think about the groups, to think about which topic you would like to use in the group. If you don't know exactly before we start, it's also okay, but you have to know by the time we finish next week. And then you continue with this project in the team. And from there on, we'll go through this Launchpad methodology and try to add new innovation tools every time and go through certain assessments. And you guys will always present your learnings at the beginning of the week. Okay, you guys look all tired. Philip is close to being asleep here. Are you tired, Philip?
Yeah, a little bit. I actually thought that the lecture was just until 7. So
No, it's 7:30 normally, but so I'm
okay.
5 minutes over. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, then I misunderstood this.
No, it's 2.5 hours, which is 3 academic hours. Okay.
Oh.
All right. But I promise you also that the next ones will be shorter because we will always start introducing new things, and I will actually let you do a lot of the things later on yourself. Yeah, we don't have to do this in this lecture. Okay, any other questions? Victoria, any questions?
No questions. I'm fine.
If there's no questions, then everything is clear, right? Okay, if everything is clear, I have no idea where my cursor is. Oh, no, we'll figure it out. Okay, in this case, I wish you a great weekend. I'll send you the stuff in the next 10 minutes. I'll probably drop it in the WhatsApp group. And other than that, we'll meet next Friday, right? Very good.
Hi.
Bye.
Bye.